All right, and welcome to the Doggy Stars podcast, where we're going to be talking about service dogs, dog training, and disabilities. I am your host, Jenny, and with me is my co-host, Audrey.
Hello.
And today we're talking about our first episode, what is a service dog, what isn't a service dog, and things like that. So to start off, definition of service dog, according to the United States, every country is a little different, of course, and it's just easier to say, let's stick with the U.S. So in the U.S., a service dog is a dog that is individually trained to mitigate someone's disability. So of course that says that there's training involved.
Yeah, and it has to be specifically, you don't want to get a dog who can perform this task for this broad number of kind of things. You'd want it to be specifically tailored to the person with the disability, I think is the important part of the definition. Because a lot of people, like, just having a well-behaved dog doesn't mean your dog would be a service dog. A lot of people try to pass things off that way, but that's not what anybody's actually defining service dog as. But yeah, so the important part of the definition, in my opinion, and I don't know, I guess that is a good point because I don't know what it is in other countries, but is that it has to be for your specific disability. So if you have a disability and maybe somebody else you live with has a disability, you can't, okay, the dog is mine today and then yours on Tuesday, and you can't do stuff like that.
Yes.
But yeah, so there's a lot of rules around that and stuff, and it can get complicated.
Yeah, well, and that's an important thing too, you said, is for your disability, which is, and a lot of organizations kind of go around this a little bit, but the dog has to be trained individually. So just because a dog has been trained as a service dog doesn't necessarily mean anything if it doesn't help that person's individual disability.
Yeah, exactly.
So like an example I always like to give is the task of like fetching medication. Some people, that's just helpful. Some people require that. And it's the requirement that makes it what we're talking about, the service dog task.
Definitely, yeah. It's definitely not enough for it to just be, like another one that we've talked about a lot is alerting. If you need an alert for a medication that you could have a timer for, that's not really a requirement at that point. So you have to think about, because there's a lot of, honestly, there's so many questions that go into whether or not a service dog actually works for this person. I don't know if this is off topic or not, but like, you have to ask yourself a lot of questions before you really commit to the idea of a service dog. I think the fantasy of a service dog oftentimes ends up being so much better, and like you think of all these good things that it would bring to you or have for you, but you don't think about kind of what you actually need and then what you have to do for that dog. So like, if you need to take a pill every day at the same time, a service dog is kind of unnecessary. If that's the only thing you need it for, like you can set an alarm on a phone or a watch or something in your house, but just to have a service dog whose only thing is like tells me when to take the exact medicine that I take every single day, that's not really a requirement, you know? And so I feel like a lot of people will think of like the bare minimum of like, oh, this would be nice to have, but it's, do you need this thing?
Yes.
You know, and it's a sensitive topic, of course, and like I don't want to make anybody upset or whatever, but it's something to think about, definitely.
Yeah, of course, and that's one of the things that I always like to talk about when I'm talking to someone about, you know, their service dog, whether or not they need a service dog, which is a whole other topic, of course.
Yeah, definitely.
But is like, write down a list or think of a list of the things you can't do for yourself. And then you look at that list and say, can a dog be trained to help
in any of these?
In these ways.
Yes.
And then that's what would make it a service dog.
Yeah.
Just because, as you said, oh, I forget my medication sometime, but it's always at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right, every day.
You set an alarm. But let's say, you know, a diabetic who their blood sugar drops through the floor, suddenly they're on the ground, they need a medication that they can't easily reach. Same exact thing, but it's a task for the diabetic where Not saying only diabetics,
Right,
but
of course, yeah.
in this situation,
Yeah.
where it might not be in the other case.
No, that's a huge difference. Is like the it would be nice versus the I literally need help with this thing. I can't not do it.
Yes.
That's where like the main definition I think of service dog comes in is right there.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things I like that you said is that needing help. I like to point out, just as like a subtle thing, is if you're currently getting help in a way right now, but you can't do it on your own, that doesn't mean a service dog can't be trained for it.
Right.
So like in the diabetic example, if currently they have a person they can call out for help, the person can go get it,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean it's not a task that a service dog could
Right. No, that's a very, very good distinction. Yeah, especially because there's no guarantee. If you live with someone like who can help you, that's super awesome, but they're not always going to be there maybe. And so having the dog then is a requirement because you would need something or someone there to get it for you. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, that's a huge distinction.
Yeah. Alright, so we've beat the definition to death a little bit, but that's alright. So training, obviously, that's part of the definition is the dog has to be trained.
Yeah.
So, there's so much to...
Oh, yeah.
when it comes to the training of service
There
dogs.
is.
But at least for now, trying to stick to kind of the basics, what do you think, the training-wise makes it a service dog? We talked about tasks and work.
Yeah, so I mean, the obvious one is well-behaved. Your dog has to be well-behaved in public. And I think that one of the problems we run into is that people who have really well-behaved dogs feel like they can get away with pretending to have a service dog because that's the easiest way to tell is like, oh wow, your dog is super desensitized to all these things. It's probably a service dog, and so people will get away with that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the training, and honestly, in my opinion, that's the hardest part of the training is the like behavioral like manners training part of it.
Yeah.
Because if you can master that part, then doing the tests and stuff is, in my opinion, so much easier to train. So there's that aspect. So like manners training, very, very important for any dog, but specifically service dogs. And then the other part of training, which is the tailoring it, the specifications for your whatever your disability is. So you can kind of break it down into two parts. The one takes forever. In my opinion, the manners training takes for absolute ever. And then the tasks part, that's where most people need the help, like from trainers. But if you have the basics of how to kind of create a behavior, you kind of already know how to do those things. I often tell a lot of my clients that like I'm kind of just here to coach you. Mm-hmm. Like if we've gone through manners training together, you already have all of the information you need to train almost everything else that you could need. And I'm now here to kind of remind you of those steps as you like delve deeper into like what specifically you would need. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like those two separate parts. Like even though I have more fun doing the cool like, oh, I'm gonna run around the room and do this other thing that you need him to do. That's more fun. The more like time consuming part is definitely the manners part of it and the desensitization and the socializing. That is like I think the biggest part of training when it comes to service dogs.
Well, and so you're saying like that desensitization. So what kind of things does it look like? As in, obviously, you think of, well, a well-behaved dog.
Yeah.
But a dog who can go to the airport and they're in crowds and sounds and of course eventually going on an airplane, which is loud and vibrates and small spaces and but so having that whole picture really is the important part of the service dog. That is an important thing is in the US is a dog who is uncontrolled.
Very vague words.
Unfortunately, they're very vague, but who is not under control can be removed from this establishment, even if they otherwise fit into the definition of a service dog.
Yeah.
So those general manners really matter. Which important part of that is generally if they're not barking a lot.
Right.
Like a single bark is allowed as part of a task.
Right.
But if they're just barking and barking, or if they're growling.
Going to the bathroom.
Yes, if they go to the bathroom, specifically mentioned, in those cases, a service dog can be removed from an establishment.
Yeah.
Even if it matches all the rest
Yeah.
of the definition of what is a service dog, which brings us to that next area is public access.
Mm-hmm.
So the important thing that really makes a service dog is that they are allowed in places that don't normally allow dogs with their person.
Yeah.
And there are, of course, some exceptions, and we can always go into those in a future time.
Yeah.
But in general, a service dog is allowed with their person because they're medical equipment.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the legal consideration. We're, of course, not saying dogs are property
Right.
in that manner or anything.
Right.
But just legally, they're considered the same as like a wheelchair, so they have to be allowed.
Yeah. And I think a question I get a lot from people who are thinking about getting a service dog or something like that is about restaurants and other places where, I mean, even the thought of seeing a dog there is kind of weird. And that's why the training, the manners thing is so very important, is because, so you kind of want your dog to be invisible. We've talked about this before, obviously, but like, the best, this is something you've said to me like 1,000 times, the best compliment a service dog team can get is, I didn't even know you had your dog here. And so public access, I think the best way to approach public access is like, obviously starting in places where your dog is comfortable, where you feel safe, but also where there's activity that your dog is going to have to get used to. Because if your goal, like let's say, I run into this too, where there's a dog who at home is so perfect, right? They do everything they need to do. They might even have like task training, but going out, they either have a really short stamina or no desensitization at all. And so if this is an issue that anyone's running into, the best way to go about this is like literally a park, like a place where you normally see a dog. Like honestly, places where dogs are normally allowed are usually more difficult when it comes to desensitizing than places where they're not, because where dogs are allowed, there's other dogs and there's lots of noise and there's children everywhere, and so there's all of these other things. And so if you can start doing public access training in places where dogs are already allowed, it's so much easier to transition to like those more difficult places. I feel like there's a lot of people who, when they're training and they're thinking about public access, they're like, oh, how am I have to get on a bus, or like I have to go into like a clothing store, or how am I going to practice in a restaurant? You don't have to start at any of those places ever. If public access is like the next thing you have to train for your service dog, start in a place where no one can ask you to leave. Like go to a park where if your dog barks or go to the bathroom, no one can tell you to leave, until like the sun sets or whatever the rules are,
Yep.
But yeah, public access, I guess it's technically part of, if you're breaking the training down into two parts, it's technically in the manners, I guess. I mean, you can make an argument that it's in both, but because it is. But if you look at it on like the manners side, it is so much, there's so much more payoff if you just go to places where there's tons of activity that you can control the level of.
Yes.
And what I mean by control the level of is, if you're at a park, right? If there's a park right here with a bunch of children, if your dog can't be 20 feet away, you can go 40 feet away or 50 feet away. Like, you have so much control over how much your dog is reacting to this thing, and that automatically translates like more naturally as you get closer and closer to other areas that you would need to bring your dog. I feel like I just over-explained that so hard, but
no, that was perfect. Well,
yeah.
And I love it because one of the places that, of course, in the past I've worked with clients is, say, pet stores.
Yeah.
Because that's another one where
They're so hard.
But they're allowed, and
Yeah.
if a dog has an accident, oh
Right,
well,
they're used
5
to it.
million dogs have had accidents
Yeah.
there. But it's always funny that they're so much more difficult. Everyone says it, and I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more difficult when you go from succeeding in a pet store to succeeding, to
Anywhere
a
else.
restaurant,
Yeah.
or to, even though restaurants have food, or to a mall. Doesn't matter. The dog's like,
No, this is easy
I
peasy.
got this.
Yeah, this is nothing. This is nothing in comparison. Oh yeah, no, I totally agree.
But you did make a good point about the park.
Mm-hmm.
Is a pet store isn't necessarily as easy to control.
Right, yeah. Because you're going to turn a corner, you know, and then there's like a dog who's like, "Wow, I'm freaking out," and then you're like, all right, well, this is difficult.
And trying to gain that space really depends on the size of the pet store and its layout. Whereas that park, it's a lot easier generally to set yourself up, walk away.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Great. So I think we talked about that. So just really quickly, want to talk about housing. Obviously, as service dogs are considered medical equipment, they're allowed in housing. So, you know, apartments and if there's some sort of, you know, I don't know if a homeowners association would say no dogs. They might.
I don't think there's any that do that. No.
But if there was one that said no dogs over a certain size or no breeds.
That's true. Yeah, there are those.
A service dog cannot be restricted by those.
Yeah.
The service dog has to still be allowed. There are, of course, just like with everything, there are a few exceptions for like really small housing units.
Yeah.
Like a landlord that only has a couple of units.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, if you are the one who is living there, your service dog has to be allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I did mention, you know, size restrictions and breed restrictions. Those are important because more and more places are doing that. Like, well, okay, we'll allow small animals, but not big dogs,
right.
Or we won't allow bully breeds.
Right.
But even if, you know, if it's a service dog, if it fits into the definition of a fully trained service dog as opposed to an in-training dog,
right.
It has to be allowed in the housing unit.
Yeah, and that I always get like a little dodgy when I have to answer these questions because I feel like I know them and I'm like, what if I get it a little bit wrong? But with renting and stuff like that, if there are like what are those things called? Like you have to pay extra to have like a dog or a cat.
Yes, like the deposits.
Yeah, you can't do that, right? Because
correct.
It's medical equipment.
Yes.
Right.
So
okay.
it is actually illegal for an apartment
or something.
unit. Yeah, for a landlord to charge, you know, $200 down payment or $50 a month.
Yeah.
For a service dog.
Yeah.
A service dog cannot be charged for.
Right.
Which also housing is a little different, but also in hotels. Like hotels can't charge because there's a service dog either.
Right. And they also can't refuse you.
Correct. Right. Because of the service dog.
That has happened before. Like I've watched videos of people talking about that, and I have heard horror stories about stuff like that, and it's really, really messed up. And I think the really messed up part is that most of the time when you're dealing with someone who has a service dog, whether the original disability was anxiety or not, this person is more than likely than not going to have some kind of stress or anxiety going out into public with a dog if they've had negative experiences, and then going to a hotel and just doing a regular thing that everyone else is able to do without a problem, and then being stopped or told you're not allowed to, and they're wrong, but they think they're right, and then they're yelling or getting angry. Like I've heard so many, you have terrible stories. Like that could probably be a whole nother episode.
Yeah,
of
probably.
Me just sipping tea, looking at you very sad as you tell
horror stories.
Yes, as you tell your horror stories, because it gets real messed up real fast. There's actually, when I was looking for an apartment before I bought my house, I didn't end up going with any of the apartments, thank goodness, because they were terrible. But when I was looking around, this guy, I don't know how we got onto the topic, but he was asking me like what my occupation was, I think. And I was telling him, I train service dogs. And he was like, you know what, I actually have questions about that. And I was like, all right, let's go. Let's do this. Because, I mean, I feel like for anybody, if you're not on the clock, it's frustrating to have to, like, do your job, right? But I kind of feel like anybody who's actually asking questions about it, I am, like, not obligated, but I want to answer those questions whether I'm being paid to or not, because I want people to have the information. That's like, those are dangerous words to say, but
she didn't say that. No.
But seriously, so I had to answer this man's questions, and he was like, they were honest questions. He was wrong. Everything that he was saying was wrong. But so I was glad he asked, because he really was. He was like, well, they're not allowed to be here, right? Because like we don't allow dogs. And I was like, no, you can't do that. Actually, and he was like, really? He's like, even if it's a big dog? And I was like, no dog. If it's a service animal, you can't. You have no. It's theirs, and you can't do anything. He was like, wow, I didn't know that. And I was like, yeah, most people don't.
Yep.
They just don't.
Yep. Well, and so speaking of housing, then that leads us into emotional support animals.
Yeah.
So that's the other type of animal that gets special rights and
With
permissions
housing.
with housing.
Yeah.
Is ESAs.
Yeah.
Though service dogs, quick step back, is in the U.S. service animals can only be dogs or miniature horses.
Right.
An emotional support animal can be just about any animal in existence. You can have an emotional support tarantula if you really.
Can you really?
I believe so.
You can?
I believe so.
It's just the airlines that are.
Yes.
Okay, because I was like, oh, maybe they're redefining it. Cause
No,
that just...
well, that's a really good point. Is the airlines have different laws than housing and then public access.
Right.
Those are all separate laws.
Yeah.
So even though we treat service dogs like it's the same thing, technically, the definition varies slightly between each of those places. Right. But so in ESA, there are some exceptions, like you said, on airplanes. You can't bring just about. There are lots of species restrictions now.
After that peacock, remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that day?
Yes.
Every single one of my clients was like, "Did you hear about the peacock?" And I was like, "Yes, please." We all know. Nobody hangs up like this anymore.
No.
Anybody younger than us can be like, "Why did she punch her phone into the table?" I should have done that. I also should have just done this. All right,
that's fine.
This is getting confusing.
Right, ESAs and their species. So nowadays, airlines are very much more restrictive.
Yeah.
And they're even changing the laws probably further. So, if this is a couple years from now, we don't know what species will or won't be allowed. But like right now, dogs, cats are the main ones.
Yeah.
Some airlines will allow
anything fluffy. I think most fluffy things are allowed, right? Like chinchillas.
If it's in a container,
right,
that helps. But like birds and reptiles and arachnids and things like that aren't necessarily allowed on airplanes.
Well, imagine if you were on an airplane and you have anxiety. Let's just say you're me, okay? And you're terrified of spiders. I've actually been doing a lot better. But tarantulas I can't do. I draw a line at tarantulas.
I don't blame you.
Okay? Like, if I'm on a plane, I don't have a service animal, right? But I have invisible disabilities. I'm on a plane and the person next to me has their emotional support tarantula. I can't be on a plane for 12 and a half hours next to a tarantula. I would vomit everywhere. I would freak out.
Though, let's make the same argument for a dog.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
There are people who are terrified of dogs.
That's a good
We'll
point.
make the exact same argument.
That's a good point.
Especially when the dogs have been, unfortunately, there are a decent number of dogs who have been, lied about, or they don't have the training.
That's true. That happens all the time.
And they bite someone.
That's so true.
So, unfortunately.
No. I mean, that's a very good point. I have an aunt who's a flight attendant, and she was just talking about. She was like, literally every day there's fake service dogs on our planes, and there's nothing I can do about it. And I was just like, dang, because that screws everybody else up.
It does.
It's like for people with legitimate service dogs, now they have these huge problems because this person was like being a jerk. Yeah. It really sucks.
Well,
it really sucks.
Which is one of the important one of the parts of the definition of an ESA is that they don't require any training.
Yeah, which is weird.
Yes.
That's weird.
Yeah, however, the only sort of like public quote unquote access they get is airplanes.
Right.
Specifically, they're not allowed in restaurants. No. They're not allowed in any place that doesn't allow dogs. No. Yeah. You can't have an ESA in the mall and just be like, "Oh, it's an ESA, you can't kick it out." That's not how it works. Right. And that kind of gets back to the ESA species thing, is because the airlines are more restrictive, most ESAs across the board are only ever given special permissions for housing. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they're pets. Yeah. Whether they get training or not, they're still pets. Yeah. Except the important thing is that their person must have a psychiatric disability. Yeah. So I saw just the other day on Facebook, I saw an ad for, you can bring your pet with you anywhere legally. Just click on us to find out how, and we have doctor's notes in 30 minutes.
Oh my god, that's horrible.
Yeah, it pissed me off so much.
Oh my god, that is horrifying.
Yeah, but...
Oh my god.
Well, I reported them
Oh,
all.
good. Oh, okay, good.
I reported all of the ads.
Oh, thank God.
But, as misinformation, because that is one of the things is ESAs, because they do require psychiatric disability, generally they are allowed to require paperwork from a therapist or psychologist,
right.
something like that. So people think, well, you know, I'm moving into this place that doesn't allow dogs. I'll just get a doctor's note and then I can bring my dog with me.
Yeah.
Now it's an ESA.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Yeah.
It's very important that, well, all animals give emotional support.
Yeah.
I mean,
they do.
It's true.
They literally do.
That's what science tells us.
That's why
what we're
that's why we have pets and not rocks.
Exactly. They give emotional support. However, they're not an ESA, an emotional support animal that's protected unless it's for a psychiatric disability.
Yeah.
Which I know there's a lot of confusion about these definitions.
It is confusing. It is, especially in reference to service dogs, because if you go out and, because you don't need a certain, in America, you don't, in the United States of America, you don't need specific certification, you don't need a vest, none of those things are legally required. You can, it's so much easier for anyone to fake it. It's so much easier. So part of me is oh, well, it's good that it's easy for people who really need it to get it easily. But then the other part of me is all of the easiness that was allotted to this person now because of these requirements that weren't necessary also makes it easier for other people to take advantage of it, which then makes it harder for the original person who I was excited for, that it was so easy. So there's all of this back and forth. And then the other issue that I have with this whole topic is it shouldn't be this difficult for people to have pets.
Yes,
because we would have less fakers, we would have less frauds if people were, if training were much more widely available, if the information was easier to get, if it was more affordable for people in lower income houses, if there was certain educational requirements, maybe even you have to have a trained dog to live here instead of you can't have a dog here because there was this one time blah blah blah, if we stop restricting having just regular pets, then we can also stop people from lying about having not just pets. It's super frustrating. I really can't stand that.
Definitely. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think education is such an important thing is because, I mean, there are people who do this knowing all the things and maliciously say, well, and not even maliciously, but just
selfishly.
Selfishly say, I'm just going to do this thing anyway.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't understand.
I don't freaking understand.
And you do this.
Yeah. Because that's the thing, I've heard, I don't know this for sure, but I have heard that there are other countries in Europe where training is very normal and dogs being kind of everywhere is normal. Yep. You can go to the grocery store and have your very well behaved dog with you and everybody's just oh, hello, regular person, may I please pet your dog? And then the person will be yes or no, and then that's it. Whereas in America, it's pandemonium. It's chaos. You can go somewhere with a dog who actively looks upset, and it's not oh, I know this dog is upset because I'm a professional. Anyone who can see should be able to see that the dog is upset and is I'm going to, without asking, come over and pet this dog. So the culture surrounding dogs in America is so infuriating.
Yes.
It really is, because people feel oh, there is an animal, I'm allowed to touch it because I'm a human. You know what I mean? There's kind of this sense of entitlement. And in other countries, you don't have that issue, so you don't have as much lying and fraudulence when it comes to people who legitimately need service animals or an ESA or whatever else it is, And I really wish that there was an easier way for everyone to get this information so that it was just like, okay, like we can all just know how to go about somebody else has a dog. I have to ask before I touch it. If somebody's dog is wearing a patch that says please don't touch, don't ask, and also don't touch it, because we've run into that problem when we're training, where there's a patch that's like in training or don't touch or something, and somebody will still come up and try to touch this dog. It's wild over here.
Yeah.
I can't stand it. I wish it wasn't this crazy.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why, like, I started the blog.
Yeah.
And
get the
hopefully
information out
doing
there.
this podcast.
Yeah,
hopefully. We'll see.
Yeah.
But, you know, and trying to do this education and letting people know about general dog things, like
basic things everyone should know.
You always ask to pet a dog if you don't know the dog.
And yeah, we have to tell that to adults.
Even if you know the dog, sometimes you should ask if you can pet the dog.
I have a dog with anxiety, okay, and he doesn't like people's faces in his face, because that he was like, he lived in a house with children before, and they would grab his face and like bite it and kiss it. And so now when people get close to his face, he's like, right, freaks out, right? I'm the only, he'll give me kisses and that's it. He doesn't want to give any, and if he gives you a kiss, you're a very special person, okay? But I have friends who come over who I've told, and these are my friends and I love them dearly, and I've told them, don't put your face near his face. And they still are like, oh my God, he's so cute. And I'm like, no! Like I feel like I have to like run in slow motion and like jump in front of them so that he doesn't like eat their face. He's never bit anyone, but there's always the possibility. Like you should, no matter how well behaved that dog looks, that dog could be like kissing a baby. You don't walk up and just start touching this dog. Yeah. Like if somebody walked up and just started touching me, I would bite them. I would bite them or do the human equivalent. I would do something real mean to that person. And like the fact that nobody applies that to living creatures that don't speak the language they speak, like really frustrates me beyond belief. For real.
Yes.
Yeah. But no, you're right. Education does need to be like much more widely available, and hopefully stuff like this helps.
We'll work on it.
Yeah.
All right. So very briefly, I just want to talk about some of the other dogs that are often mistaken for service dogs.
Yeah.
Some of the terms, like you hear someone say service dog or ESA or therapy dog or working dog, and it's like those are all different things.
They're not synonyms.
No.
A lot of people think that they're synonymous, and they are not.
No.
It's confusing though, so I don't get mad at it.
No,
I get mad at other things. I don't get mad at that.
That's what education's for. It's
Exactly.
what we're doing.
Yeah.
So therapy dog is, the important thing is that therapy dogs are trained to help other people.
Yeah.
As opposed to the service dog who helps their one person.
Right.
So therapy dogs are the ones that you'll see going to schools for reading programs.
Right. Old folks' homes.
Yep. Hospitals.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. Like service dogs, there's no legal certification.
Right.
Which people don't necessarily know.
Yeah.
All these organizations that exist, that have existed for quite some time and are very legitimate, there's no legal backing.
Right. It's just convenient.
Yeah. But that's a whole other topic.
Yes, it is.
We can go into certification and such
We
at
should.
another time.
We
Yes.
definitely should.
But therapy dogs, the important thing is that they are trained, but to help other people, to go out in the world and help other people.
Yeah.
They don't get public access.
No.
They don't get any special things for housing.
Right.
So if you have a golden retriever, so let's say 60-pound dog, who is trained to be a therapy dog, that doesn't mean you can go to a housing that doesn't allow dogs over 50 pounds.
Yeah.
If it was an ESA, because you have a psychiatric disability that requires it,
Then you could.
whole different situation. But a therapy dog is not the same.
Yeah. That's sad.
In some ways.
Yeah. Because I mean, if they're trained to be around people, you'd think that they're well enough to do, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it does.
It's sad.
It's back to the whole American society regarding animals.
And then just rewrite it.
Yep.
Rewrite the whole thing.
And of course, working dogs, or occasionally I'll hear the term military service dog.
Right.
Or people just call service dogs when they're talking about military dogs,
And it's
or
completely
police dogs.
different. Yeah.
Yes, they're completely
almost
different.
the opposite of a service dog, actually.
Yeah, service dogs actually in the U.S. they're not allowed to be trained in bite work, protection work,
Right.
because
Ever. Even if they like failed the program, they're
Yep.
still not allowed.
Because then they're considered hidden weapons.
Yeah.
And you have to have special permission for hidden weapons, and service dogs are medical equipment.
Yeah.
You can't, having a sword in your cane is
Right.
not allowed.
No. Sad, but true.
Sad but true. So, very briefly, I like to just give the way that I try to help people remember the differences between all these different terms.
Yeah.
So a service dog is trained to help their one person. Gets public access and housing.
Yep.
Things.
Right.
ESAs are not trained, are for one specific person with a disability, are not given public access, but are given housing permissions.
Yeah.
Therapy animals, because they don't have to be dogs, therapy animals are trained, are for other people, don't have any special
Anything.
access.
Yeah.
And any other type of working dog, whether it's a farm dog, a military dog, a police dog, will have training, but it's for their specific purpose and generally don't have any special permissions except within their work.
Yeah.
Of course. So of course this is the very, very basics of what is and isn't a service dog.
Barely the tip of the iceberg.
I know there's so much we could talk about, but I don't want to go on too long. Is there anything else you think that's really important about this topic?
No, I think
Okay.
we got it. Yeah,
Okay.
I think we got it.
All right.
Basics.
Hopefully you enjoyed listening to this, and you can find us, ask us questions at doggystars.org. That's DOGGYSTARS.org. You can contact us through there, through email, Facebook, Twitter, even my Instagram. Ask us questions. We'll be answering questions at the end of these podcasts, as well as talking about our topics. If there are any topics you want to make sure we cover, please feel free to contact us as well. Thank you very much for sticking with us.
Bye.